Station was the largest trading hub in the Orion Reach. It floated in the darkness of neutral space like a small city made of metal and glass. Over 40,000 beings from a dozen different species called it home. Some lived there permanently. Others came to trade, to negotiate, or simply to experience the strange mix of cultures that could only exist in a place where no single species held power. Commander Jack had been stationed there for almost 2 years. He was a tall man with graying hair and tired eyes that had seen too many things across too many worlds. His job was simple on paper. He represented Earth's interests and helped human traders navigate the complex web of galactic commerce. In practice, his job meant endless meetings, careful diplomacy, and learning to smile at beings who sometimes found humans strange or amusing. His communications officer, Lieutenant Amy Dalton, sat across from him in the small Earth Embassy office. She was younger than him by 15 years, with short brown hair and quick hands that moved across her console like they had minds of their own. She was brilliant with technology, able to make old equipment do things its designers never intended. "Another quiet day," she said, not looking up from her work. Jack nodded. Quiet days were good. Quiet days meant no crises, no emergencies, no difficult decisions. He had learned to appreciate quiet days. The first explosion changed everything. The station shook so hard that Jack was thrown from his chair. Alarms began screaming throughout the corridors. Red emergency lights replaced the soft white glow that normally filled the embassy. Amy was already on her feet, pulling data from every sensor she could access. "Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace," she reported. Her voice was steady, but Jack could see the fear in her eyes. 60-plus vessels. They're not responding to hails. They're firing on the station's defense grid. Jack moved to the window. What he saw made his blood run cold. The blackness of space was filled with ships. They were dark vessels with sharp angles and surfaces that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. He recognized their design from intelligence briefings he had hoped would never become relevant. He said, the name alone was enough to spread terror across the galaxy. They were in species that had been conquering worlds for over 300 years. They did not negotiate. They did not show mercy. They consumed everything in their path, stripping planets of resources and populations alike. No species had ever successfully repelled a full invasion force. Those who tried simply died faster than those who surrendered. The station's defense grid was designed to handle pirates and small raiding parties. It lasted less than 4 minutes. Jack watched the defensive platforms explode one by one, their burning remains drifting past the window like fallen stars. "Distress calls going out on all channels," Amy said. "The Galactic Council is responding. They say the nearest Allied fleet is 3 days away." 3 days, Jack closed his eyes. They would all be dead in 3 hours. The station's internal speakers crackled to life. The voice that came through was not the calm tone of the station commander. It was raw panic. "All residents, this is station control. We are under attack by forces. Boarding parties have breached the outer hull in multiple locations. All residents are advised to shelter in place. May the stars protect us all." The transmission ended. Jack could hear screaming in the corridors outside. He could hear the heavy footsteps of people running, the crying of children, the desperate voices of beings who knew they were about to die. He turned to Amy. "Get me a count of all humans on this station." She worked quickly, 32 including us, scattered across 6 different sectors. 32 humans, a tiny number compared to the 40,000 others on the station. Earth was still a minor power in galactic politics, largely ignored by the older and more established species. Most of them had never even seen a human before. They didn't know what humans were capable of when pushed into a corner. Jack opened a channel to all human personnel. "This is Commander. All Earth citizens, report to Sector 7 immediately. Bring whatever weapons you can find. We're not hiding today." Amy stared at him. Jack, they have never been defeated. Their boarding parties are legendary. We don't have military equipment. We don't have armor. We barely have guns. I know, Jack said. He walked to the small locker in the corner of the office and pulled out the emergency pistol that every embassy was required to keep. It was a small weapon, almost pathetic compared to what they would be carrying. But it was something. The other species are going to barricade themselves in their quarters, he continued. They're going to hide and hope to kill them quickly rather than slowly. That's not who we are. We fight. We'll die. Probably, Jack checked the charge on his pistol. But we'll die standing, and maybe, just maybe, we'll buy enough time for something to change. Amy was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her own desk and pulled out a toolkit. If we're doing this, I need to make some modifications to the communication array. Someone needs to know what happened here. Jack smiled. It was the first genuine smile he had managed in weeks. That's my girl, let's move. They left the embassy together. The corridors were chaos. Beings of every shape and size ran past them, their eyes wide with terror. Some were carrying possessions. Others were carrying loved ones. None of them paid any attention to the two humans moving against the flow of traffic. Sector 7 was a commercial district near the station's core. It had thick walls, limited entry points, and good sight lines. It was not designed as a defensive position, but Jack had learned long ago that any location could become a fortress if the defenders were determined enough. Other humans were already arriving when Jack and Amy reached the sector. He saw Lieutenant Commander Ben, a former Marine with hands and calm eyes. He saw Dr. Lisa Monroe, the station's human medical officer, carrying a bag of emergency supplies. He saw traders and technicians and diplomats and maintenance workers. 32 humans from all walks of life, brought together by the simple fact that they were far from home and about to die. Ben approached Jack. "What's the plan, Commander?" Jack looked at the faces around him. They were scared. They were outnumbered. They were, but not one of them had run away. "The plan," Jack said, "is to show these bugs what happens when you corner a human." Humans worked fast. They had less than an hour before the boarding parties reached their position, and there was much to do. Ben took charge of organizing the defenses while Jack coordinated with the few station security officers who had chosen to join them. There were only 4 security officers, all of them from a species called the. They were small beings with blue skin and large eyes that expressed constant worry. They were not known as warriors. They were merchants and scholars. But these 4 had decided that running was not an option. "You understand what you're signing up for," Jack said to them. "The don't take prisoners." The lead, whose name was, nodded slowly. "We have watched your people prepare. We have seen how you move, how you speak, how you look at death without flinching. We wish to learn what makes humans different." Jack put his hand on shoulder. "Stay close to us, do what we do, and when the fear comes, don't fight it, use it." The sector had 3 main entry points. Ben divided the humans into 3 squads of roughly 10 each, with 1 officer attached to each squad. They built barricades from overturned tables, cargo containers, and anything else heavy enough to stop a plasma round. It wasn't much, but it was something. Dr. Lisa Monroe set up her medical station in a small storage room near the center of the sector. She had limited supplies, barely enough to treat a dozen serious injuries. She organized them carefully, knowing that she would have to make terrible choices in the hours ahead. "How long do we need to hold?" she asked Jack when he stopped by to check on her. "As long as we can," he replied. "Every minute we fight is a minute that a rescue fleet gets closer. The nearest fleet is 3 days away." Jack said nothing. They both knew the math didn't work, but saying it out loud wouldn't help anyone. The first appeared at the east entrance 43 minutes after the invasion began. Jack was with the squad guarding that position, and he saw them with his own eyes. The creatures were terrifying. They stood over 2 meters tall, with hard shells covering their bodies like natural armor. Their heads were elongated, featuring compound eyes that could see in multiple directions at once. They moved with an unsettling speed, their legs clicking against the metal floor. They carried weapons that glowed with barely contained energy. They made sounds that weren't quite language, a series of clicks and hisses that communicated rage and hunger. There were at least 50 of them in the first wave. Jack's squad had 11 humans and one. They had pistols, a few rifles salvaged from the security office, and improvised explosives made from power cells. It should have been a massacre. The commander raised one of its arms, signaling the advance. Its soldiers moved forward with practiced efficiency, expecting the same terrified response they had encountered everywhere else on the station. Jack stood up from behind his barricade and fired. His first shot took the commander in one of its compound eyes. The creature screamed, a high-pitched sound that hurt human ears. Before it could fall, 3 more shots from 3 different humans struck it in the chest. It collapsed, twitching. For a moment, the other froze. This was not what they expected. This was not how prey was supposed to behave. "Fire!" Jack shouted. The humans opened up with everything they had. The corridor became a storm of plasma bolts and bullet rounds and pure human fury. The formation broke apart under the assault. Some tried to advance. They died. Some tried to take cover. They died more slowly. Some tried to retreat. They died in the back. When the smoke cleared, 37 bodies littered the corridor. The humans had lost 2 of their own, a trader named Danny and a maintenance worker named Rose. They had died standing, weapons in their hands. The officer stared at the carnage with his large eyes. His hands were shaking. "You killed them," he whispered. "You actually killed them. No one kills the—" "We do," Jack said. He was reloading his pistol. His hands were steady. "Tell your people, tell everyone on this station. Humans fight." Word spread fast. The surviving station residents, huddled in their quarters and hiding spaces, began to hear stories. The humans were holding Sector 7. The humans had killed soldiers. The humans were not running. The commanders watched through optical feeds from their soldiers' eyes. They saw their warriors cut down by a species they had never encountered before. They saw humans take wounds that should have been fatal and keep fighting. They saw a ferocity that made no tactical sense. They sent another wave, larger this time, 100 soldiers. The battle lasted for an hour. The humans lost 5 more of their own. The lost 82. "This is impossible," the fleet commander hissed from his ship. "They are primitives. Their world is barely capable of interstellar travel. How are they doing this?" No one on his bridge had an answer. By the 3rd hour, the humans had lost 11 of their 32. The survivors were exhausted, wounded, and running low on ammunition. But they still held the line. Every time they pushed forward, they were thrown back. Every time they tried a new tactic, the humans adapted faster. Jack had taken a plasma round to his left shoulder during the 4th wave. The wound was bad, burned deep into the muscle. Lisa had patched it as best she could, but he had refused to leave the barricade. "You need rest," Ben told him between attacks. "You're barely standing." "I'll rest when we're dead or rescued," Jack replied. "Until then, I stand." Ben didn't argue. He understood. They all understood. This was not about survival anymore. This was about something deeper. This was about showing the galaxy that humans were not prey, that Earth would not be ignored, that when you pushed humanity into a corner, humanity pushed back harder. They sent a 5th wave, and a 6th, and a 7th. The humans killed them all. By the 6th hour, 19 humans remained alive. All of them were wounded. All of them were tired beyond words. All of them were still fighting. Somewhere in the corridors beyond their barricades, they were regrouping. They had lost over 200 soldiers to a species they had never heard of. Their commanders were beginning to feel something they had not felt in 3 centuries of conquest. They were beginning to feel fear. While the battle raged in the corridors of Sector 7, Amy Dalton was fighting a different kind of war. She had found a small maintenance room near the station's main communication array. The room was cramped and filled with cables and junction boxes. It smelled like burned circuits and old dust, but it had access to the systems she needed. They were jamming all standard communication frequencies. Every distress call the station had sent was being blocked before it could reach more than a few light seconds. The Allied fleets knew something was wrong, but they had no details. They didn't know the scale of the attack. They didn't know about the humans holding Sector 7. They didn't know that 40,000 innocent beings were about to die. Amy had been working for 3 hours straight. Her fingers were bleeding from pulling apart equipment and rewiring circuits. Her eyes burned from staring at screens filled with code and frequency data, but she refused to stop. "There has to be a way," she muttered to herself. "There's always a way." The jamming technology was advanced, far beyond anything humans had encountered before. It created a blanket of interference that covered every standard communication band. But Amy had noticed something interesting. The jamming was focused on specific frequencies. It was designed to block the communication methods used by the major galactic powers. Earth was not a major galactic power. Earth used different frequencies. Earth built things differently. She pulled apart the station's emergency beacon and combined its components with parts from a civilian entertainment system. She rewired the power conduits to draw energy directly from the station's main reactor. She programmed a new transmission protocol that used frequency hopping patterns based on old Earth military designs. It was messy. It was improvised. It was exactly the kind of thing that humans were famous for among the few species that actually paid attention to them. When she finally finished, she had created a device that looked like a pile of garbage held together by hope and electrical tape. She had no idea if it would work. She had no way to test it, but she had to try. She typed her message carefully. Every word mattered. Station under assault. 60+ enemy vessels. 40,000 civilians. Station defenses destroyed. All standard communication jammed. Boarding parties throughout station. Humans holding Sector 7. Requesting immediate assistance. This is Lieutenant Amy Dalton, Earth Diplomatic Corps. Please respond. She pressed the transmit button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the device began to hum. The lights in the maintenance room flickered. Somewhere in the station's core, a power relay exploded from the sudden draw. The message went out. It punched through the jamming like a needle through cloth. It traveled at the speed of light, spreading across the darkness of space in an expanding sphere. Amy had no way of knowing if anyone would hear it. She could only hope. 3 days away by normal travel speeds, the Earth warship USS Relentless was on a routine patrol near the border of explored space. She was a destroyer-class vessel, compact and deadly. Her hull was painted in the dark gray that Earth military vessels preferred. Her weapons systems were hidden behind armored panels. To the untrained eye, she looked almost peaceful. Captain Cole was in his ready room when the message arrived. He was a man in his early 40s with a square jaw and eyes that had seen combat more times than he cared to remember. He had joined the Earth Navy because he believed in protecting people. That belief had never wavered, even in the darkest moments. His communications officer, a young man named Chris Palmer, brought him the transmission with shaking hands. "Sir, you need to hear this." Listen to Amy's message 3 times. Each time his expression grew more serious. When it finished, he sat in silence for a long moment. "What's our position relative to station?" 3 days at standard speed, sir. "And at maximum burn?" Chris checked his console. 14 hours. "But sir, the engines aren't rated for that kind of sustained output. Chief Vega says we'd be pushing them past the red line." "Get me Vega." Chief Engineer Tony Vega was a thick man with oil-stained hands and a permanent frown. He had been keeping the Relentless running for 12 years. He knew every bolt and wire in the ship like he knew his own body. "Captain, I heard the message," Tony said when he arrived. "You're thinking about making a run for." "I'm not thinking about it, I'm doing it." "Sir, with all respect, the engines will fail if we push them that hard. We might not even make it halfway." Stood up and walked to the window of his ready room. The stars outside were beautiful and cold. Somewhere out there, 32 humans were fighting impossible odds. Somewhere out there, 40,000 innocent beings were waiting to die. "If we arrive in 3 days, everyone on that station will be dead," said, "including our people. I'm not going to let that happen." "We're one ship," Tony said quietly. "They have 60. "Then we'll be a very angry ship," turned back to face his engineer. "Tony, I need you to do the impossible. I need you to give me everything those engines have and then some. Can you do that?" Tony was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I'll keep them running, Captain, even if I have to hold them together with my bare hands." "That's all I ask." Walked onto the bridge. His crew looked up at him, their faces showing a mix of fear and determination. They had all heard the message. They all knew what he was about to ask them to do. "Set course for station," said. "Maximum burn. All hands prepare for high acceleration operations." His helmsman, Ensign Park, entered the coordinates with steady fingers. She was young, barely 25, but she had proven herself in a dozen difficult situations. "Course laid in, Captain. Ready on your order." Sat down in his command chair. "Engage." The Relentless leaped forward. Her engines burned with a ferocity that would have horrified their designers. The ship shook and groaned as she accelerated past every safe limit. In his ready room, Cole had one more message to send. It was short and simple, broadcast on the same frequency Amy had used. "Station, this is Captain Cole of the Earth warship Relentless. Hold on, we're coming." 14 hours away, surrounded by enemies and running out of ammunition, Amy Dalton heard those words through her improvised receiver. Tears streamed down her face as she ran to tell Jack. Help was coming. The hours that followed Amy's announcement were the longest of Jack's life. Every minute felt like an hour. Every hour felt like a day. They kept attacking, wave after wave, and the humans kept dying. By the 10th hour, only 19 humans remained alive. Ben had taken a plasma round to the leg and could barely stand. Lisa Monroe was operating on almost no sleep, her hands still steady but her eyes hollow with exhaustion. The ammunition was almost gone. The barricades were falling apart. But they held, they kept holding. Word had spread through the station that help was coming. The other species, hiding in their quarters, had heard Amy's broadcast and the reply from the Relentless. For the first time since the attack began, they felt something other than despair. They felt hope. They felt something too. Their commanders watched their soldiers die by the dozens against a handful of wounded primitives. They listened to the intercepted transmission about an Earth warship rushing to the rescue. They calculated the odds and made a decision. They needed to take Sector 7 before that ship arrived. They needed to kill every human on the station and prove that they could not be stopped by anyone. The final assault began in the 12th hour. Jack saw them coming. Hundreds of soldiers, more than they had ever sent before. They filled the corridors like a living tide. Their weapons glowed with deadly energy. Their clicking voices rose in a sound that might have been a war cry. "This is it," Jack said to the humans around him. His voice was calm, almost peaceful. "Whatever happens, I want you all to know something. I have never been prouder to serve with anyone in my life. You are what humanity is supposed to be." Ben grabbed his shoulder. "Save the speeches for after we win, Commander." Jack smiled. "You're right, let's kill these bugs." They charged. The humans opened fire. The battle was brutal beyond words. They pushed forward with overwhelming numbers, climbing over the bodies of their fallen to reach the barricades. The humans fought with everything they had left, using empty guns as clubs when the ammunition ran out. Lisa Monroe, the doctor who had sworn an oath to do no harm, picked up a weapon and joined the line. She killed 3 soldiers before one of them struck her down. She died with her eyes open, still looking toward the corridor where more enemies were coming. The security officer stood over her body and fired until his weapon melted in his hands. He had come to learn what made humans different. Now he understood. It was not their strength. It was not their technology. It was their refusal to give up. The barricades fell. The humans retreated to a smaller defensive position, 16 of them now, then 14, then 12. Jack took another wound, this time to his side. He could feel the heat of it, the wrongness of damaged flesh, but he kept fighting. He would die on his feet. And then, in the darkness of space beyond the station's windows, something changed. A flash of light, a ship dropping out of hyperspace, one ship alone appearing directly in the center of the fleet. Jack saw it through a window that was cracked and scorched from weapons fire. He saw the ship's shape, familiar and beautiful. He saw the Earth flag painted on its hull. "She made it," he whispered. "She actually made it." The USS Relentless was smaller than any of the warships. She was outnumbered 60-1. By every logical calculation, she should have been destroyed in seconds. But humans had never been very good at logical calculations. On the bridge of the Relentless, Captain Cole looked at the enemy fleet surrounding him. His ship had barely survived the journey. The engines were held together by emergency patches and Tony Vega's stubborn will. Half the systems were running on backup power. The crew was exhausted from 14 hours of high-acceleration flight. None of that mattered now. "Open a channel to the flagship," said. His voice was steady, almost relaxed. "Let's introduce ourselves." The communication officer made the connection. Every speaker on station picked up the transmission. Every being on the station heard what came next. "This is Captain Cole of the Earth vessel Relentless. You have attacked a station containing human citizens. You have killed our people. You have threatened innocents under our protection." Paused. His crew watched him with something like reverence. "You have one chance to withdraw," he continued. "Take your fleet and leave this system. Never return. If you do not comply, I will destroy every single one of your ships. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. There will be no second warning." The fleet commander responded with a sound that might have been laughter. "One ship threatens 60. You humans are insane. All vessels destroy that ship immediately." The fleet turned its weapons toward the Relentless. Smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a man who had been waiting for this moment his entire career. "Ensign Park, evasive pattern Delta. Chief Vega, give me everything you've got. Weapons officer, you may fire at will." The Relentless moved. She accelerated with a speed that shouldn't have been possible for a ship her size. She twisted and rolled through the incoming fire like a dancer, always one step ahead of the enemy targeting computers. On station, the soldiers suddenly stopped their assault. They received new orders from their commanders: fall back, defend the boarding ships. Something had gone terribly wrong. Jack watched them retreat. He slumped against a wall, his blood pooling on the floor beneath him. Around him, the surviving humans stared at each other in disbelief. 11 of them were still alive. 11 out of 32. "What's happening?" someone asked. Amy Dalton was at her communication station, listening to every transmission she could pick up. Her face showed an expression of pure wonder. "The Relentless," she said. She's fighting all of them." Through the cracked window they could see flashes of light, explosions, ships breaking apart. One ship against 60. And somehow, impossibly, the one ship was winning. The Battle of Station would be studied for centuries to come. Military academies across the galaxy would analyze every moment, every maneuver, every impossible decision. They would try to understand how one human ship had defeated 60 warships in less than 2 hours. Most of them would fail to find an answer. The truth was simple. They had never fought humans before. They didn't know what they were dealing with. The Relentless moved through the enemy fleet like a shark through a school of fish. Her point defense systems were designed to handle asteroid fields at high velocity, tracking thousands of objects simultaneously and destroying them before they could pose a threat. The missiles, advanced as they were, might as well have been thrown rocks. Her main cannons were another matter entirely. Earth engineers had built them with the same paranoia that characterized everything humans created. Where other species designed weapons that were efficient and elegant, humans built weapons that were brutal and overwhelming. The Relentless carried guns that were considered barbaric by galactic standards. They hit harder, fired faster, and consumed more energy than any reasonable warship should carry. They were devastating. Chief Weapons Officer Sam sat at his console and coordinated firing solutions with machine precision. He had trained for this his entire career. Every drill, every simulation, every boring patrol had led to this moment. His hands moved across the controls without hesitation, selecting targets and assigning weapons with the calm efficiency of a man doing exactly what he was born to do. Target locked, firing, target destroyed. He spoke the words over and over like a prayer. Target locked, firing, target destroyed. Ensign Park flew the ship through maneuvers that the tactical computers classified as impossible. She threw the Relentless into rolls and dives that pushed the hull to its limits. She used the debris of destroyed ships as cover, hiding behind wreckage for crucial seconds before emerging to strike again. Her flying was beyond anything they had encountered. Their targeting systems couldn't track her. Their ships couldn't match her speed. They fired thousands of rounds and hit nothing but empty space. Captain Cole commanded from the center of the bridge. He watched the battle unfold on his tactical display, making decisions in fractions of a second. He directed his ship like an extension of his own body, always knowing where to strike and when to dodge. In the engine room, Tony Vega performed miracles. The engines had been pushed past every safe limit during the journey. They should have failed hours ago, but Tony wouldn't let them. He rerouted power, replaced burned components on the fly, and held failing systems together through sheer force of will. "You're not dying on me today," he muttered to his engines. "Not today, not ever." The fleet began to crumble. Their coordinated assault fell apart as ship after ship was destroyed. Their commanders screamed orders that no one could follow. Their soldiers died by the thousands, trapped on vessels that were being torn apart by human weapons. 1 hour into the battle, they had lost 30 ships. Their fleet commander ordered a tactical retreat, pulling back to regroup. The Relentless followed. She didn't give them time to recover. She kept attacking, kept destroying, kept showing what happened when they threatened humanity. By the 90-minute mark, 43 ships had been destroyed or disabled. The remaining 17 vessels broke formation and fled into hyperspace. They ran without looking back, desperate to escape the nightmare that had descended upon them. The Relentless let them go. They had a message to carry. They would return to space and tell everyone what had happened. One human ship had torn apart their greatest fleet. One human crew had broken the legend of invincibility. They would never attack a human world again. They would never threaten a station under human protection. They had learned a lesson that they would never forget. Humanity was not prey. The Relentless docked with Station 2 hours after the last ship fled. Her hull was from glancing hits. Her engines were barely functioning. Her crew was exhausted beyond words, but she was intact. She had won. Captain Cole walked through the damaged corridors of the station until he reached Sector 7. What he found there broke his heart and filled him with pride in equal measure. The barricades were shattered. The walls were scorched black from weapons fire. Bodies of soldiers lay everywhere, piled in mounds that to the desperate fighting that had occurred. And in the middle of it all stood 11 humans. They were wounded, all of them. They were covered in blood and ash and the marks of battle. They could barely stand, but they were standing. They had held the line until help arrived. Jack stepped forward. His left arm was in a makeshift sling. His uniform was torn and stained. His face was pale from blood loss, but his eyes were clear and his back was straight. He saluted with his good arm. "Commander Jack, Earth Diplomatic Corps. It's good to see you, Captain." Returned the salute. "Took me a while to get here. I hope you didn't have too much trouble." Jack laughed. It was a weak sound, barely more than a whisper. Nothing we couldn't handle. They shook hands. Around them, the surviving humans embraced each other. Some of them were crying. Some of them were laughing. All of them understood that they had just been part of something that would change history. The next few days were a blur of rescue operations and medical treatment. Allied fleets arrived and helped evacuate the station. The 40,000 beings who had hidden in their quarters emerged to find their station damaged but intact. They had been saved by a species most of them had never noticed before. The Galactic Council held an emergency session. They offered Earth full membership and alliance treaties that would have taken decades to negotiate under normal circumstances. They wanted to be friends with the species that had broken the. But more important than politics were the stories that spread from that day forward. Stories about 32 humans who had refused to hide when death came calling. Stories about a single ship that had challenged an armada and won. Stories about a species from a small blue world on the edge of the galaxy, a species that didn't know how to surrender. In the years that followed, when beings across the galaxy faced impossible odds, they would remember Station. They would remember the humans who stood their ground, and they would find the courage to stand as well. Because they had learned the truth that they had learned. When the darkness comes, when all hope seems lost, sometimes salvation arrives in the form of humans who are simply too stubborn to die.